the longer that you look at sheep and the closer you get to them. I mean, we had some that were as close as 18 yards.
Wow.
And you get that close to something, that you've been waiting 4 years to go after, and it gets you mentally. I think that was the hardest part of this whole trip, was having the mindset that you may not find a legal one, even though you are that close.
These are stories of outdoor adventure and expert advice from folks with calloused hands. I'm James Nash, and this is the Six Ranch Podcast. Four years ago, I bought a new truck for the first time ever, and I was so excited. It was incredible. It smelled good. It felt good. I wasn't constantly afraid of breaking down, It was awesome. But after I drove it for a couple weeks, I do the same thing that I always do, and the back seat started to fill up with stuff. I'm guiding elk hunters and deer hunters, and I'm duck hunting, and I'm fly fishing, and all that gear just accumulates. And pretty soon, I wasn't able to take people with me anymore, and I was embarrassed. People would ask for a ride, and like, nah, sorry, man, I've got too much stuff with me. But I couldn't put it in the bed because then it gets damaged by weather. So I go to the internet, and I'm looking for options, and I ended up buying a deck-to-drawer system. Now, this was a big purchase for me, but it's something that I felt like I needed, and it looked like it was going to be a good product, and it really was. Decked came out with a new drawer system this year, and they've made some meaningful improvements over the previous one. You have almost no wasted space in your truck bed now, so you can access the sides of the drawers, and then the drawers roll a full 18 inches farther out, so you can actually access the back of the drawer even if you don't have a lot of arm reach. There's some really strong tie-down points on top that have a 400-pound load rating, so if you're going to haul something like a motorcycle or big coolers or whatever, you can really strap your gear down and make it secure. You can lock these drawer systems, so you can lock the drawers, or if your tailgate locks, then nobody can access the drawers anyways. So I actually feel like my stuff is more secure inside this drawer system than in the cab of my truck. That's a big deal to me. The complete deck system is made in America by Americans, and that's something that I love and appreciate. They've got one that will fit in any truck or van that's been made in America in the last 20 years plus. You can go to decked.com/sixranch and get free shipping. But just being honest with you, they get free shipping to everybody. I also, while you're there, want you to check out their deco line. So they've got a bunch of different boxes and storage containers that either fit on top of or inside of the drawer system, and those are built really robust. I saw the prototypes at an event this summer. I'm impressed. I'm excited to get my hands on them. I haven't yet, but the prototypes were super badass, and the ones that are in production model, they're available now over at decked.com. So even if you just need a place for some tools, or you need a new bow case, or something along those lines, go check that out. And if you're driving around right now and your back seat is just full of gear and you can't haul people around, maybe you should consider looking at the full deck drawer system, because it's a good piece of gear. It was a good purchase for me, and I hope it helps you. I think we kind of need to start the show by giving a shout out to bus driver John.
Bus driver John.
Me and Mr. Coltin Weber here, we grew up together, riding the same school bus, and we had the same bus driver.
Bus number 8.
Number 8, the whole time. He would meet here. He would be at the bottom of my driveway, which is about half a mile long, at 7:12 a.m. And he would be within about 30 seconds of that time. And there was lots of times that I would have just under half a mile to go when I saw him come around the corner and have to start my day with a wind sprint. But, I think John was a Korean War veteran, and up until just a couple years ago, I was still seeing him drive that bus, that same number 8 bus.
Long live John.
Think about how many kids got to school because of him, in terrible weather conditions and everything else. Love that guy.
I think all the bus drivers are, you got to give a shout out to all of them. Coming here 2 days ago out in Florida, that was one of 2 vehicles that I passed was a school bus headed out to drop kids off.
Under really nasty weather conditions.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Just phenomenal. I think, especially these rural bus drivers that, they've got to have some long days. They're getting up early, chaining those buses up.
Warming them up, yep.
Yeah. John, if kids were, and I'm sure that this does not happen today, but if kids were fighting, he would lock up the brakes, pull over, and tell you to get in the ditch and duke it out. And I don't know that anybody ever took him up on the offer.
I don't think they did.
It scared us straight for sure.
But he also had a sense of adventure and fun. I mean, if you'd ask him to go a little bit faster over a bump that'd launch you out of your seat, he'd do that as well.
Yeah. Anyways, we're not here to talk about school buses. We're here to talk about Coltin. Are you a millionaire?
Never have been, probably never will be.
Okay. Did you win a sheep hunt at a raffle or in an auction or something like that?
I used to be lucky, and my luck ran out when I hit about 10, 11 years old, and I haven't won anything.
Okay. Do you work in the hunting industry where you get paid to go on hunts and things like that?
I blew that opportunity a while ago.
Okay.
So, nope.
So typically those are the groups of people that get to go on a sheep hunt. They're either super wealthy and can afford, the high price of the tag, or they're lucky and they win it, or that's their job, so a corporation pays for them to go. But you are an outlier from all that. Talk to me through the process of deciding that you wanted to do it and then how to financially make it happen. You're a blue collar guy. You work in the trades.
Yep. For starters, I wanted to go on an adventure in Alaska. I initially didn't have my heart set on sheep. It was what was out there. I didn't do a whole lot of research beforehand, which I guess we'll talk about lessons here later in the show. But I found a outfitter at one of our local outdoor shows, and we spoke back and forth about options, what he had available, and kind of left it at that. And I reached back out to him a few weeks later to see, it'd been on my mind, obviously. Reached back out to him a few weeks later, and he was willing to work with me on price. I think that was one of the main things that allowed me to do that. I shouldn't say price. It was price was set, but payments and payment options.
Right.
And my decision to do that was looking ahead at, saying my body's not going to hold up forever. I'm pretty hard on it. And so,
yeah, you played college football, you work hard, how long in your life are you going to be able to, climb talus slopes and stuff like that? I mean, you're a big, tall guy, you're super fit, you worked extremely hard to get ready for this hunt, but you have to think about it. Do I want to save money until I'm 60 and give it a try then?
You do. Yep. And I still want to knock out stuff that's going to be a little bit more physically demanding than your deer hunts where you can go sit in a blind, or moose hunts, something that's more stationary, or can be more stationary. And so that was one of my driving factors. Is I wanted to sheep hunt. I wasn't real specific on species of sheep, but I think that the Dall sheep are a more affordable option when it comes to sheep hunting. Not everywhere, obviously. So yeah, I found this outfitter, chatted with him. He was willing to work with me on payments over the span of, I believe it was 4 years.
So super smart way to do it.
Yep.
You've created the goal, you've saved up some money, and then found somebody that is willing to do that, which as an outfitter makes great sense. Like that's the type of person that I would love to take hunting, and to prorate that money out over a few years. That doesn't hurt the outfitter at all as long as they can manage their cash a little bit. So yeah, that's
and
smart.
it's really nice, not having your bank account go from $20,000-$30,000 to zero right away.
Right.
You can you know what to expect each year, and you know what is going out, and then by the time you get there, everything's paid for, and you can enjoy it.
Yeah. So did you set up something where like you were putting money monthly into an account? Like how did you organize that with your own finances?
Yeah, I did. I worked as many odd jobs as I could for as long as I could, and any of that additional income that I had outside my normal job, I would put in a savings account, and then I have a couple retirement accounts along with a fund money account that I send money to every month. And so I know what's going to be in that at the end of the year, and then anything additional, from odd jobs is going to be the cherry on top.
Gotcha. Smart. Okay. So then, we're 4 years into it. You didn't necessarily have great news going into it, right? Like you knew it was going to be tough because what was the report on the sheep hunting from the previous year?
I'd reached out and asked what success rates were, what he had been seeing during scouting season, and years prior. And the 2 years prior, they had seen one sheep, which was being hauled out on the back of a four-wheeler, and then two other sheep, which were both rams, but neither one were legal.
Mm-hmm.
They had a few hard winters before that, which are really hard on the sheep, just from a food standpoint.
Right. Yeah. One of the wildlife biologists that worked here for a long time, he's since retired, but I think he wrote his doctoral dissertation on Dall sheep feeding habits. And I should have him on the show to talk about it, but what he described to me was that we know that Dall sheep are a diurnal species. They feed during the day. So what do they do when they live so far north that for part of the year there is no day? Right? So this was the question to his doctoral thesis, and the answer was they eat in the dark. But if it's a big tough winter and it gets icy and everything gets covered up and the wind can't blow all of the snow and ice off some of those places, there's nowhere for them to go.
Yeah, my understanding of it is the ice is the killer.
Yeah.
They can dig through snow just fine, but when they get a freeze thaw situation where there's a layer of ice, they can't break through any of that to get to any food.
Yeah. And even if you're digging through snow, like a lot of snow, that's a lot of extra energy that you're putting out for the calories that you're taking in, and you can end up pretty weak. The other thing with that is they'll end up at pretty low elevation at the end of the winter, and then as those bottoms start to open up, they're really vulnerable to all the predators. They can access them. A sheep's defense is the terrain.
Most certainly.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so you're going into it knowing that there's not a lot of sheep around. How did that affect your mindset after putting so much effort and years of money into this?
You have to control what you can control, and the rest is fate. If it's meant to be, it's going to be. If not, you have to go into it with a mindset of it's not a trip where you're guaranteed anything. It's not a trip where you're even guaranteed to see one. But the physical aspect of it is in your control. The shooting aspect of it is largely in your control. So as long as you do your part with the things that are within your control, I don't think that the mental side of things is challenging, but it would completely screw with me mentally if I hadn't done all that stuff and there was sheep that were easily obtainable if I had put in the work that I should have.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a mindset of going in it with not expecting to come home with something, expecting that you're going to work hard, expecting that you're going to see cool country, and that should be your expectations.
Yeah. How did you prepare physically?
I started about 3.5 months before I left. In my eyes, there's no preparation like preparing the way that you're going to hunt. So, runners don't hit the gym and lift a bunch. They go out and they run. So I hiked, and I hiked in my boots, which were newer. I wouldn't advise going in with brand new boots to anybody. They will tear your feet up.
What kind of boots did you opt for?
I went with the crispy, I believe they're guides. They're 8-inch.
Is it that boot right there?
It is.
Looks like a crispy Nevada, maybe.
Nope, it's their guide boot. It's an 8-inch tall boot. It's a little stiffer, but that was something that they required was a leather boot. So I bought a weighted vest, and we have a state park that has a few miles of trails, and I would go there every day after work, whether it was 90 degrees or raining, didn't matter because you're going to see all the conditions anyway. You can't be a fair weather hiker. And I started with no weight in the weighted vest, and I would start at the bottom, go 2 to 4 miles an evening, and I would try to beat my time for that week. The next week I would bump it up to 10 pounds. The next week I'd bump it up to 20 pounds, 30 pounds until I got up to 60 pounds. And then I just, I would focus on beating my time, whether it was, I'd start from the top and hike down and then have the second half of my hike be all uphill. So you're not always relying on, I put in the work first thing and then I ended on an easy note going all downhill.
Yep.
And that seemed to be really effective. I wish I would have known that tundra moss was as squishy as it is, because then I probably would have strapped some pillows on my feet, because that, just takes the energy right out of you. But it was very, very effective. I don't, I'm sure that they have training programs. I didn't look into any, but
I see a lot of people who are training for a hunt like that, and they focus all on the uphill, and they're like hitting the Stairmaster and box jumps and things like that. I see twice as many injuries going downhill as I do uphill, maybe more than twice as many.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. We have a peak where I live. It's called Great Northern, and it is pretty straight up and down, and it definitely helped with that as well. And trekking poles, I didn't believe in them until a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
They have the ones that are, I think they're called sissy sticks.
Yep.
Which I'm like, yeah, that's pretty spot on. But oh no, they are an absolute lifesaver.
I'm a huge believer. I
think they take something, what is it, like 50-60% of the pressure on your bones and energy that you exert.
It would be tough to say. If I were to guess, I feel like it gives me about 30% more. I can go 30% farther than I could have without them. I almost never fall with trekking poles because you can reach out and kind of do that Heisman move and stop yourself. You're not using your core strength nearly as much to maintain balance, and it just provides that extra 1 or 2 points of contact at any given time. I think it's tremendously helpful.
Slips, trips, and falls. The shale up there in the boulder fields that you walk through, they saved me from going over multiple times.
Yeah.
And they have quite a bit of flex in them, I learned as well, and they go back to straight pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. So were your sissy sticks aluminum or carbon?
I went with aluminum. It's what I had.
Yeah.
The other thing when you're talking about, budgeting is I didn't have all the gear for this hunt right out of the gate. That was another thing I worked really hard on, is not saving that to the last year and not buying it all up front. My outfitter had a gear list. And then I spoke with you, and you gave me some other recommendations as well. And so I tried to chip away at, X, Y, Z over the course of each year so that I could build that up, and then have everything ready to go so I wasn't hit financially really hard at one time or another.
Was any of my advice helpful, or was it all bad?
No, it was. I don't think you give bad advice. It's something, if you can, which it was helpful, especially with talking to you, because you had been up there and done some of the things, so you can kind of mentally prepare in a way if you do speak with somebody that goes up ahead of time, or has done it multiple years in a row, what to expect, so you don't go into the unknown, or you don't have a preconceived notion of how it's going to be, and then you get, either let down or the opposite, while you're up there.
One of the interesting things geologically about Alaska is there's a part of the state that is fixed on the Earth. So it hasn't moved around as much as the other tectonic plates. So a lot of what is Alaska are exotic islands of land that have crashed into that fixed point. And that's what's created all these splendid mountains. There's mountains all over Alaska, huge mountain ranges, and the rock, because of that, because these exotic islands are crashing into this fixed point and continuing to push against it and are getting shoved up into all these mountain ranges, all of the rock is broken, right? It's not like these places that have a bunch of granite or limestone and, you've got like a mountain can be a single rock, up there, it's like, it's just vertical piles of broken rock.
It's insane, yeah. And the stuff that does look solid, at least the places that I was at, it's rotten.
Yeah.
And so there is no for sure handholds. If you start slipping and you grab a rock, it could come right down on top of you, or little chunks could break off, lose your footing, lose your grip.
And it's also loud. Climbing around in those loose rocks is really loud.
And that's one thing, if you do take trekking poles up there, there's a time and a place for the metal tips.
Yep.
And there's a time and a place for the rubber tips.
Yep.
The metal tips will produce sound like crazy when you're going through the boulder fields.
Yep. But they also grab rock like none other.
Those
carbide tips are really good. I am team rubber only because I can't stand that clack, clack, clack everywhere I go. And I think that being in shaly mountains, there's always rocks that are rolling, whether it's from animals or just like it's that rock's time to slide a little bit. It's a more or less constant sound of rocks coming down the hill. So animals aren't super spooky about that.
No.
So like that's a natural sound that it's okay to make, whereas that metal sound, metal against rock, that's an unnatural sound, and animals tend to have a reaction to that.
Yep.
So, yeah, trekking poles are a big deal. Okay, so you're mentally prepared, you're physically prepared, you've got the gear, you've talked to people, and now it's time to go. So tell me your sheep hunting story.
So I got up to Alaska. I was hunting the Alaska Range. Um, got up there, met with the outfitter. My guide was a little bit later to the party. I was earlier. I gave myself an extra day so that if anything were to,
Yeah.
have complications in transport, I'd have a little bit of time to sort that out. Um, so I had, a day to kind of relax, take everything in. When I got to his place, we went to the range, made sure my rifle was on zero, and he kind of gave me the rundown of where I was going to be, what I was going to be doing. I hadn't got a whole lot of information prior to that, so as far as where I was going,
Mm-hmm.
so it was nice kind of to see. It would have been a little bit more nice had I asked those questions ahead of time, got Onyx maps downloaded so I could see exactly where I was going, what I was getting into. I think that would have helped mentally as well. Um, but water under the bridge and a lesson learned there.
A lot of Alaska guides are really reticent to talk with their hunters about what's going on. Like they're not great about telling you what the plan is, where you're going, and there's a cultural difference with that. Like when I was moose hunting, when we're getting ready to fly out, I asked the outfitter, I was like, "Where am I going?" And he goes, "Well, we're going to go over this mountain pass here, and go up this valley and over that mountain pass and into the next valley." And I was like, "Okay, can you show me where so that I can download this map?" And he's like, "Oh, don't worry about that." Like, actually, I am. What if something happens to my guide and I need to make it out of there, and you're not available to fly in here, or you wad your airplane up on the way out? Like, I really want to be able to know what's going on so that I can rescue myself.
And I don't know that. I mean, there's some guys that, and I wish I would have pushed a little bit harder for that for reasons just like that.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's a lot of people that go into it thinking that stuff can happen like that. I think that it's more of, I'm here for the experience. These guys are going to carry me through it, and I'm just going to do what they say.
You have to have a lot of faith in your guide.
You do. You do. Anyway, we got, after we got everything dialed, I'd watched YouTube videos for the 4 years, and I did have a preconceived notion as far as how I was going to get to the areas that I was hunting.
Mm-hmm.
And my thoughts were either a float plane or, a little Super Cub with the Tundra wheels on it.
Yeah.
Not the case. We rafted into the first place we hunted, which I really wasn't prepared for. I think I would have packed a few things differently.
Like what?
Waders.
Yeah.
I got completely soaked. I don't think it was a usual circumstance. They did some flying beforehand, and they found a band of rams that was in an area where you could hike into it, but the hiking portion would take 2 or 3 days. The rafting portion took a couple hours.
Yeah.
So if I would have known that, I could have stayed a little bit more dry.
Mm-hmm.
So we rafted in the evening. I think we left at about 8:30 at night. It's light until, I don't know, 12:30 or 1 for the opener, and set up camp, tried to get stuff dried out, and did a little bit of glassing that night. Fog rolled in and out, so it was a little bit harder to see if anything was up there, but that was the last place that they had seen them when they did their flyovers. So next morning, got all of our camp broke down and threw our packs together, and it dumped rain on us all day. waterproof gear is only waterproof for so long, so I learned that it does dry back out. But that was, my physical preparation paid off. The mental side of things, I didn't expect to get soaked through. I had spent fairly good money on some pretty nice rain gear, and it can only do so much.
What kind of what clothing brand did you go with?
I went with Kuiu.
Yeah.
And I didn't get their heaviest stuff because I knew that it adds another layer of heat, which my body runs pretty hot as is. And I didn't get their lightest version because I had read multiple places that can catch and rip, and then I mean you might as well not have any if your rain gear's ripped anyway.
Right.
So I went with their mid-weight, which did fine as long as I kept it on. And we got up and we got all the way to the top of the mountain that we were hiking. And we had spotted, I think it was 4 or 5. You told me before I left, you told me to keep a diary of everything I did.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that. So, I mean, I could look back and, see exactly what I saw, and what my experiences and thoughts and feelings were at the time. There's a lot of frustration in it.
Yeah.
So we saw some that night. The clouds, as you see on every Alaska video, they roll in and they roll out so fast, and it's 100% accurate. And it's, you may see something, you may see a ram, but you can't tell if it's legal or not.
Right.
So
what is a legal ram in this area?
So this area, they had to be 8 years old. They is either 8 years old, they had to be broomed on both sides, or they had to be full curl.
Yep.
And so we put some to bed. We got camp set up. Next morning we went and, glassed the same area where they were the night prior, and they weren't there. But we found a band of, I believe it was 12 or 13 rams. And we tried to get down close enough to them. We had wind switch. Anything that could go wrong did go wrong as far as getting to them. You couldn't get enough time to watch them to see if there was any legal rams in it or not. They all looked great to me. I mean, this is the first time I'd been sheep hunting. I think it takes a pretty experienced or pretty educated person to tell if a ram is legal or not. The full curl. There were several that I thought, oh yeah, that's full curl. Let's shoot it. Let's go.
Mm-hmm.
Not the case, and it can be by inches, short by inches
or less.
Or less. Yep.
And another frustration with that is some rams flare more. So if they had grown with a tighter curl, they have the length to be full curl, but because they're flared out more, then they don't make it.
Yep. And the area that we were hunting, the genetics were that of flaring rams. Yeah. And so there was a few 6-year-olds that we were able to look at for hours, and they were as close as you could get to full curl without being full curl.
Yeah.
And had they been on the other side of the genetics where it was a tight curl, I mean, we would have been in legal sheep for days.
Yeah.
But that's not the case, and that's hunting. So we spent, I think it was, including the day before opener, I think we spent four days on that mountain, and we covered every sheep that was on there. The year prior, the same mountain that we were on had no sheep. And we had, gosh, it must have been 35 to 40 different sheep, and they were rams, lambs, and ewes. And, we had a pretty good vantage from where we were at. So we circled the mountain, I would say, at least half of the mountain in different areas each day, looking at what were some of the same rams and some of the new rams filtered in and out, but just couldn't quite pin anything down to be legal.
Mm-hmm.
which the longer that you look at sheep and the closer you get to them. I mean, we had some that were as close as 18 yards.
Wow.
And you get that close to something, that you've been waiting 4 years to go after, and it gets you mentally. I think that was the hardest part of this whole trip, was having the mindset that you may not find a legal one, even though you are that close. Um, we sat on some sheep that were 150 yards away, and there was 13 of them, and I mean, we watched them sleep, we watched them eat, and as long as they feel safe, which they're in some pretty crazy country where they do feel safe, I mean, they'll just sit there and look at you. And to have something at your fingertips like that and not be able to do anything about it is extremely frustrating.
How did you deal with the weak thoughts? Like, it as you're going through this, you're getting frustrated by a multitude of things. How do you have the mental resilience to go look over the next ridge, to keep trying, to keep trying? So many people quit on sheep hunts. We talked about the guy that showed up for a, $45,000 bear hunt and quit after the first day because he got rained on.
Yeah, I guess my mindset was, I've worked for the last 4 years for this. Whether it's hard or not, persevere.
Yeah.
Because you may not ever get this opportunity again. And who's to say that the next sheep, you give up and the next sheep is around that next ridge,
Right.
or under that rock that you can't see from the angle that you're standing right now. And if you would have walked 100 yards more, you could have seen him.
How many days did you end up sheep hunting?
Including, well, I mean, I guess that was more of a scouting day, but I think that I was at 6 days total. 7 with the scouting.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the low sheep numbers prior to, my outfitter offered me a grizzly bear tag for $125 more, I believe is what it was. And basically, you can shoot a sheep because they are a lesser species than the grizzly bear in Alaska fishing game's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a bear tag, but we were going after sheep.
Right.
So that was the mental side of things, is, just put one foot in front of the other. The days go by a whole lot fast. I mean, it's slow in the moment, but they go by pretty dang quick when you look back at it.
Yeah.
And after you work for so long to achieve this thing and see the things, and go on the hunt that very few people get to go on, speaking from the overall population, soak it in and enjoy it. So I tried to have that mindset all the way through. It wasn't always there, but I reminded myself of that every step I took. So from there, after we looked at every sheep that we could possibly see on the mountain, we decided to hike down, raft out, and pick our backup location, go into that. And I guess the one thing, there was a sheep that had come over that was right on the border, one of those ones that was almost legal but was not. So we had everything out and ready, and my scope was loose. I found out after so many days. So it was a good thing that we hadn't come across any legal sheep, because had I missed, I would have been absolutely devastated by, my part not coming through.
And this isn't your first hunt. You've hunted your whole life. You've worked for a couple different gun and ammunition companies. Like, you know how to put a scope on, but man, the vibrations that a gun goes through when you are flying in an airplane for many hours, it loosens stuff up. It just does. And when you add in, your travel on the mountains and changing weather conditions, like it is something that can happen. And there's things that you can do to help, but it is something that can happen. So was it the rings? Was it the base? Was it the mount?
It was the bases that attached to the top of the rifle.
Yeah, which is the most common. Like I've seen that one happen more than anything else, and it's something that that hunters almost never check the torque spec on. They just get it from the factory and they're like it's good. But man, it might be worth your time to zip those things out, put a little Loctite on them, and torque them back down again.
Absolutely. That was the one thing, I'd spent a majority of my summer shooting, getting comfortable, close range to long range. I didn't know what to expect as far as, shots go, but I wanted to be prepared for anything. So I was good out to, 600-700 yards. Not that I wanted to take a shot that far, but if it came down to it and that was my option, that's what I was going to do. But
What kind of rifle?
I had a Bergara 300 Win Mag.
Yeah.
And I had a Zeiss scope on it, and had worked some loads up with a friend of mine, and we were dialed in. And I had spoke to you, and I think you were up in my neck of the woods a month or two ahead of time.
Yeah, it was June.
And so you had mentioned the Loctite, and I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I'm like, yeah, I've got everything exactly where it needs to be.
Yeah,
I know
don't
that
want to touch it.
I torqued it down to the specs. I don't want to mess with it, because if I do, I'm going to have to waste more ammunition, and that's not something that I have everything ready to go. I had a limited supply of bullets that I was all calibrated to. And so that's one piece of advice that I didn't take that I really should have, which ended up costing me in the long run. But getting back to it, so we rafted out, which was an experience in itself. Didn't flip, which was also good. And so as soon as we got back to the truck, we went back to the range. Was very familiar with, my scope and rifle, so I tightened everything back down, got everything zeroed, and when I was sighting in, I turned my power all the way up. That's how I'd practiced. I was good with the power down, but to make sure everything was on, that's how I had done it all summer, so I wanted to maintain my consistency with that. So
Yeah, really common when you're zeroing to have your scope powered up.
yep, shooting out of a sled. So got everything dialed back in, and kind of took an afternoon to relax, regain our feet, get some not freeze-dried food in us.
Mm-hmm.
And behind my outfitter's house, he's got a range of mountains that you can see sheep on. They're massive, and so that was our plan B. He had seen 2 sheep out back behind his place, and the following morning we started hiking at 5:30 a.m. and had everything on our backs ready to go. High spirits once again, because it's kind of a fresh start.
Yep.
We saw caribou. It's pretty incredible that we crossed some rivers, and there was beaver dams there, and it was absolutely just breathtaking beautiful. The ponds that these things had created, and the landscape that they had created. But moved up past that, and it was a grind getting to the top of the first peak. And our plan was to hike up as far as you're looking at the range, as far left as we could go, hit the peaks, and then there's little fingers that come off the backside and the front side that sheep can hide in, and we're just going to follow that peak line up and then drop off those fingers in glass, which worked pretty well. Weather had, come in and out just like at the other place that we were at, where it was foggy, not foggy. And so we got to the top and it got a whole lot colder. I mean, it's pretty similar to Montana, just on a grander scale, where you can have snow, sleet, sunshine. You can get sunburn and frostbite in the same day. And so we were up on the peaks, and we had made some pretty good time. And my guide had dropped down off a finger, and he told me just to sit tight. He was going to look. Found a couple more rams, and we did everything. I asked him to grow rings on those things, but there was a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old. Um, Seemed to be a reoccurring theme of the hunt. But just massive, massive country, beautiful country, and ever-changing topography. And so we just kept going forward, and we got to a point where we got so socked in. My guide looked at me and he goes, I got to be honest with you. I have zero ideas where we're at right now. So we hunkered down. He said, I think, this stuff will kind of filter out and we can get an idea where we're at. You couldn't see 50 feet in front of you. It was just thick, thick. You could taste the fog. And we waited and waited and waited, and it was pouring down rain, and nothing really changed. So we decided to drop out of the area, drop down the backside of the mountain, and see if we could pick anything apart. At least get out, below the cloud line. And we did. We got out of that. We weren't able to. The clouds hung in, covered the mountaintops for the rest of that day, and we ended up hiking until about 10:30 that night. So it was a very long day. Soaking wet. We got camp set up. Went to bed. I mean, it doesn't take anything to fall asleep after a long day like that.
Right.
Morning can't come soon enough. And so the next morning we woke up and glassed back to one of the ridges that we wanted to get to the day before. And there was a lone sheep sitting up on the very top. And at this point we are in bear country, grizzly bear country. There's blueberries everywhere. It's an area where they bear hunt frequently and generally have pretty good success there. And we decided to hike the extra 3 or 4 miles to get better eyes on this lone sheep. We could tell it was a ram, couldn't tell how big. Spent the morning trudging back through swampland, and got up to it, and he was a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
And we glassed some more ridges, and there was 4 more sheep. There was 3 rams and a ewe that were further up the ridge from where we were able to see him. We got up there, and same story. I think there was 2 3-year-olds and a 5-year-old in that group, and then the ewe. And your morale dropped again. But at the same time, it's pretty cool. I mean, seeing them in their element, they were knocking heads and bouncing back and forth, playing off rocks. And I got some pretty good video of it. I bought a nicer camera beforehand in hopes that I would use it, to kind of capture some of the stuff and show my family when I got back home. And I didn't have it out as much as I probably should have. But I did get some pretty cool video. And we decided to drop back down to camp and see what we could see. And on our way back down, we had another ram come drop off where we had spotted the first one from that morning, and he ran straight down the mountain at us. It's in this little drainage, and he flat Houdini'd us. I mean, we didn't see him long enough to tell if he was legal or not. Um, and we had eyes on the bottom of the drainage, had eyes on the top of the drainage, and he just disappeared.
Yeah.
No fog, so I'm not sure how he did it, but that's what they do. That's why they're still alive. So, um, waited there for probably 2 or 3 hours. Still nothing. So we dropped back down to our camp, and mentally that day I had thrown in the towel. I was ready to be done. And so my guide, he was phenomenal. He didn't say much, never knew what he was thinking, but he always had glass up to his face, whether it was his spotting scope or binos, and he could pick anything up that was alive. I mean, we saw porcupines from had a mile and a half away.
Yep.
That I never would have seen. And he picked out a grizzly bear that night that was just cruising blueberry patches. And it was a beautiful bear. I got some video of him. So he was actually right above where we'd camped the night before. And it took us, I think it was like 3.5 hours to go those 2 or 3 miles. And it was 9 o'clock at night, and there was no way we were going to be able to get over there and get a shot off at a decent hour. And so we opted to put him to bed and see if we could find him in the morning. The morning came, and we glassed and glassed and glassed and glassed and glassed and glassed and glassed, and could not turn anything up. There was no sheep, there was no bears, there was no movement. And we had got an inReach message from our outfitter that the forecast was supposed to be 80% or 90% rain. And where we were at, there's a couple mountain lakes that we had an opportunity that we could have got flown out, but the charter plane was from out of town, and the weather where he was flying from was substantially different than where we were at. So even if we would have had a window at our place, didn't mean he had a window to get out from where he was at.
Right.
So our outfitter said, call's yours. You guys can stay in there and hope for the best, or you can hike out to the highway and we can pick you up, which was a pretty good haul.
Yeah.
So at this point, I think I had two days of hunting left, not including this day. So we opted to hike out to the highway and see if I could get a couple more days of hunting in. And so we spent the majority of that day just hiking and hiking and hiking. And we saw a sow with a cub. And had she been alone or a boar, we would have had, we'd had a tag filled 300 yards away, and just had zero cares that we were there. Didn't see much else in the way of wildlife on the way out. Got back out, met back up with our outfitter, gave us a ride back to his place, and kind of got a game plan together for the next day, which was to kind of recoup. My guide I don't know if he twisted his knee or tore something in there, but he could hardly walk on our way out. So we were trying to figure out ways to that he'd still be able to guide me without being on his feet as much as we had been.
Able to walk.
Uh-huh.
Oh gosh. So you guys end up on 4-wheelers looking for bears, right?
We did, and we ended up seeing one that wasn't too far off the road that we were hunting off of, and made a game play on it. Wasn't the biggest bear. That's what I keep telling myself, is that that was a saving grace of it all. But beautiful blonde color. We had got a game plan together. It was feeding towards us at the time, and it had kind of cut away back behind this little finger that came out. And so we thought if we could get up on that finger, it would be just on the other side of that. And we would, wind was in our favor at the time. Didn't have to worry about it swirling. It had been consistent all day. And um, we got up on this little finger, and my guide was on my left-hand side, and he was looking straight ahead of us, and I was looking off to our left. And the bear was feeding at probably 40 yards, 45 yards to our left, and he didn't see it. So I grabbed him, and he didn't want me to carry around in the chamber, which I think is pretty standard protocol for a lot of guides up there, safety concern, which I can respect. But I pointed the bear out to him, and he looked at me, and he goes, "Well, shoot it." So I mean, adrenaline goes when you see what you're after.
Yep.
And that kicked my adrenaline in even more. And so I went to rack a shell in the chamber, and the bear heard that.
Mm-hmm.
And jumping back to when I had to re-zero everything in, my scope was still turned up on the highest power, which is a 14. I mean, it's at 40 yards and 14 power. You're not seeing anything clearly.
Yeah.
So in the hurriedness of it all, I tried to find any sort of hair, and I took a rushed shot. You always have more time than what you think you do.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I didn't prepare for, was having that adrenaline and a shot that you don't think that you will have.
Yeah, that quick close shot.
Yep, which from now on I think I will be practicing that. But I took a hurried shot, missed. Bear ran off. I had one more shot, missed, and then it was just defeated. So the next day we drove four-wheelers for 120, 130 miles, and we saw moose and saw one bear, but he was so far out chasing squirrels that there was no way we were going to catch him.
Yeah.
So that concluded my hunt.
So let's look at this from the perspective of everybody who's thinking about trying to do it. That has that aspirational goal of doing a sheep or a grizzly hunt, this monumental hunt in Alaska, where they might have to start saving now for something 4 years from now. Give me 3 lessons learned that you want those folks to understand, to benefit from your experience.
Okay. This isn't going to be one of the 3, but book it. If you're not getting any younger, none of us are. If you want to do something, you got to be intentional about it. And if you don't book it, you're always going to say, "Well, I'll do it later. I'll do it later." And later comes and goes, and it never gets done. So I don't regret anything that I've done. I don't regret going. I mean, it was a great opportunity. Got to see a lot of things that I never would have seen had I not gone. And yeah, so I think the three takeaways are questions for friends that have done it, questions for your outfitter that you decide to go with, and if you can get references from those outfitters, talk to those guys, see what their experience was, what they liked, what they didn't like, what you could expect. If their guides worked hard for them or not. So I think questions would be one of the biggest things. Anything that I don't think there are stupid questions when it comes to this. And you can't ask too many, because any information that you gain is information that you didn't have before, and you can make a better decision based off of that and learn from other people's experiences. I beings that I was in the gun industry for a while, um, I didn't utilize my resources.
Mm.
And I didn't reach out to you, which I should have a whole lot sooner. Um, so questions and utilize your resources. Next, I would say prepare, in the way that you think and that, your questions have been asked as far as terrain goes, if you have the capabilities to do that, um, and not just physically train, but, train with everything that you take, so you know it inside and out. Your gun, your ammo, your scope, your rangefinder, how your pack works. Make sure everything that you pack with you fits in your pack. I don't think I could have got another pair of socks. I couldn't have got anything else in my pack. It was as tight as you could possibly go.
Yeah.
So prepare with everything that you have physically and gear wise. And then I guess the last would just be, and it's kind of a on the spot thing, but mentally prepare. I think the mental aspect of it is the hardest portion of the hunt. I've been on a lot of hunts, and you have your times where you have doubt, but when you have things not go your way consistently, you have to maintain a mind frame of putting one foot in front of the other and just keeping your head down and going. Because you may never get the opportunity again. And if you don't, I mean, I'm the kind of person that if I look back at that and I didn't give it my all, I'd kick myself for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, I would say, the mental preparedness of it. Yeah, those would be my three.
What was your most valuable piece of gear?
I would say my boots. If you don't have feet, you can't get anywhere.
Yeah.
I had them broke in, and I had moleskin, whatever else I could think of. If you feel a hot spot, I mean, tend to it now, because you don't know how bad it could get. But if you don't have your feet, you can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
They kept me dry. I didn't roll my ankle, which several times I could have.
Yep.
I would say boots were my number one. And then I would say my number two is layering with different clothes. I mean, you're hiking, you can sweat, you can get super hot. But the morning that we were glassing for the bear that we had seen the night before, I had every article of clothing out of my backpack and on me, and I was wrapped in my sleeping bag.
Yeah.
It was so cold. So yeah, I would say clothes and boots.
Well, I wish it had gone differently for you. I admire so much that you have a positive outlook on it, and that you enjoyed those huge parts of the experience, the adventure, getting to see those animals up close, the scenery and the beauty of it all. Like those are massive parts of the hunt that honestly are more enduring than squeezing a trigger and killing a critter and packing it around for a little while. It would be very easy for somebody to be jaded about the experience that you had, but I admire you just more than I can say for having a good, positive mental outlook on this. And you and I have some hunts that we're planning in the future, and the more you do stuff like this, the better you get at planning that next hunt and figuring out how to make it happen and how to achieve whatever version of success you define for yourself. And I think that one of the biggest pieces of advice that you've given that I would like to reinforce is make the decision to do it and take action on that decision. And you can take years in the planning, but go ahead and pull the trigger now.
Yep.
And then figure it out. I'm doing that for a hunt this fall. Like I've pulled the trigger on it, and I don't have the money to pay for it right now, but I'm going to figure it out. Like I'm going to make it happen because I've decided that I'm going to make it happen. So I'll scramble up whatever way I have to. So if people see pictures of my feet on the internet, they're going to know what's going on. Like, I'll figure it out. But yeah, I'm really grateful for your humility in having this conversation. I know it's tough, and you would rather be talking about, the 13-year-old ram that you found that was broomed off on both sides and was beautiful, and you made a perfect shot on and got to pack him out and shot a grizzly after that. But that's not the way it always goes.
Life's not about fairy tale endings, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess the other piece of advice would just be a student of the hunt. Soak in everything you can.
Yeah.
And learn from it. Because it can be applicable on a different hunt, or just in life.
Yeah.
So
I like that. Well, I appreciate you, buddy. Great story, great experience. Look forward to some more with you in the future.
Yeah, likewise.
All right. Bye. Thank you all very much for listening. I'm going to keep bringing you these stories from normal people just like you who have done extraordinary things. Everyone is an expert at something, and they have interesting perspectives on life and work and the environment and all the things that we care about. I'm going to keep bringing that to you. And I want to thank you so much for making this show possible. I also want to thank Emily Bratcher for producing this show. She does a great job editing. Really appreciate her. I want to thank John Chatelain. He did the art for the Six Ranch podcast. And Celia, soon to be Harlander, she digitized that so that we can get it out there on the internet for you. Also want to thank Justin Hay for writing this original music and the beautiful whistling that you're listening to right now. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. Please keep listening to the show. Write me a review if you feel like it, and just keep doing your thing, and we'll all learn from this together. It's been fun, and we're just getting started.